it's probably a matter of trust. I think we hear the term AI slop quite frequently.
Daily. Hourly.
Daily. And in some circles, AI slop is the same as AI generated content. And I don't think that has to be true. I think one of the key characteristics of AI slop is that it doesn't really have any nutritional value. It doesn't have any ideas that you can stand behind. It's sort of meaning shaped content that really doesn't tell you anything. I think that what makes a post good, whether it's human or AI written, is this is a story. It has a set of bullet points that are narratively important. It has a start, it has an opening premise, it has a point that it wants to land. It then has a journey that it takes you on and a conclusion that it presents to you at the end. And I think that what's important is understanding where those ideas came from, or that the ideas exist in the first place. So I think chain of cognition for me is whoever's written the final words of a post, I don't really care about, but I care about what are the ideas that it contains. How are these ideas presented? Where did those ideas come from?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest impact of AI Explored. This episode, we have Dave Breer, and Dave is an account technology strategist at Citrix, and we're going to talk about the concept of AI second brain. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks, James. Hi, Gurjon. Really nice to be on here. Thanks for the invite. I'm super excited to talk about this subject.
Excellent. So just to kick us off, you've talked about chain of cognition as proof that real thinking happens. You know, in a world where AI can basically generate anything instantly, why do you think it matters that the thinking was yours?
I think it's probably a matter of trust. I think we hear the term AI slop quite frequently.
Daily. Hourly.
Daily. And in some circles, AI slop is the same as AI generated content. And I don't think that has to be true. I think one of the key characteristics of AI slop is that it doesn't really have any nutritional value. It doesn't have any ideas that you can stand behind. It's sort of meaning shaped content that really doesn't tell you anything. I think that what makes a post good, whether it's human or AI written, is this is a story. It has a set of bullet points that are narratively important. It has a start, it has an opening premise, it has a point that it wants to land. It then has a journey that it takes you on and a conclusion that it presents to you at the end. And I think that what's important is understanding where those ideas came from, or that the ideas exist in the first place. So I think chain of cognition for me is whoever's written the final words of a post, I don't really care about, but I care about what are the ideas that it contains. How are these ideas presented? Where did those ideas come from? And I think that that's why chain of cognition helps to combat AI slop.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've been doing some stuff with a LinkedIn content creator called Matt Barker, and he has this whole concept of lived experience. So his point when you write something is, if it sounds like someone else wrote it, don't post it. Make sure, you know, so, you know, give it a time, a place, a date, something specific that is unique to you. Now, whether the algorithm actually surfaces that to people is a whole different podcast. We could do one for probably, you know, there's so many different things about the LinkedIn algorithm. So, but yeah, it's more around that thing that, you know, it is my lived experience, and whether I used AI to generate, to help generate that doesn't really matter. But as you said, once the concept comes from the person, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I agree with that. So Dave, you work at Citrix. So how did you come across this whole AI second brain, and kind of a follow up to that? Can you just lay out exactly what it is? Because there might be some people listening who are not familiar with the term.
Sure. So I'm a an account technology strategist at Citrix. My job is I work with our enterprise customers to make sure they're getting the value out of the investment they've made in our technologies. So I am a typical knowledge worker profile. My output is nothing that you can point at. It's a series of emails, customer documents, meetings, like a typical knowledge worker is. So how I came across second brain as a concept is in my pursuit to just be a better knowledge worker. And I think that a lot of the terms, a lot of the concepts are very applicable to the way that I work and the way that many people work as well. As for what second brain is, it is simply just a way of harnessing the power of information that you have in your head, in your notes, in whatever context you can scrape from meetings, to-do lists, whatever, and using AI as a thinking partner to understand that content, to reshape that content into new ideas, to develop ideas. It's sort of like a thinking structure. I can tell you how I stumbled into working in this way, but you might have to forgive me a side tangent of an origin story, because
we're all about that. Like, we go off and
we love a good story
on this podcast. Like, this is a conversation between three people, so conversations go off on tangents. That is the way we do things here. So feel free.
Okay, well, when we're still here in 2 hours' time, you can maybe rethink that. But my origin story actually doesn't start with AI. It starts with another obsession of mine, which is how to take notes, note-taking in general. I am a bit of a nerd for personal knowledge management systems. I've tried pretty much every app on the market. I think OneNote, Evernote. I've been down the Notion rabbit hole and lost far too much productivity trying to set something up there that works.
Okay, I have not got Notion. I'm sorry. Everyone seems to swear by it. I've tried it, and I'm like, I don't understand this. Yeah.
Notion is a really great product, actually. But the problem I had with it as quite a compulsive person is that it's very easy to get lost in navel gazing of trying to improve it. And I could put this thing and I could expand it to include these features. And you look up and you've spent a week just trying to make something to do your work, and you've not done any actual work. So I had to cut it off for my mental health. But it's a good system. It wasn't the system for me. I've also tried physical notebooks. I do still use those. So like bullet journaling, I find that a good way. But all of these different note-taking systems all kind of followed a similar trajectory for me, which was that I would start off very enthusiastic and I would put a bunch of time into setting things up the way prescribed by the system. I would start diligently following it. And after a couple of months, I'd probably drop off and not use it anymore. And I'd be then just reverting back to the old way of working for me, which is doing a lot of thinking in my head, and being just sort of this niggling doubt that actually I'm not taking very good advantage of the information that comes into my life, both in a personal and a professional way. And the stuff I'm doing with it as a result is probably less than it could be. And so that's kind of where I was for years and years and years. The first time that changed for me was in the beginning of 2025. I read a book called How to Take Smart Notes. It's by an author called Zonka Arons, I believe you pronounce it. I'm terrible at pronunciation, but this is a really great book. It talks about a method called Zettelkasten. And Zettelkasten actually was invented by a 1950s sociology professor in Germany called Niklas Luhmann. And it was a way that he took notes. And what Zettelkasten is actually German for slip box, because what he did was he wrote his notes down on index cards, and he wrote them in what he calls the format of atomic notes. So you write one idea per note card. You don't write pages and pages on each one. You put individual ideas, boil them down to concepts in your own words. You write them on cards, and you put those cards in the Zettelkasten or the slip box. Where these become powerful is when you take those notes out and start to think about them and start to use a very complicated indexing system to link them together. This idea belongs with that idea. This one reinforces this. This counters the point that I was making in another node. And he would start to organize these together in ways that showed chain of cognition, in that you could say, this is an argument I'm making with the ideas that I have in my brain. And it's not a note-taking system. It does take notes, but it's more of a thinking system. It's a way of thinking about the ideas that and engaging with the ideas he has and developing them. So I read that, and thankfully we live in a century that doesn't mean that I have to have a wooden filing box that I bring about. I can just use a note-taking application to get the same thing. So I use Obsidian. There are others out there, but the purpose of it is it's plain text editor. It does Markdown, so all the files are stored locally in Markdown. They're in my control. I have the ability to link them using wiki links in the same way that was prescribed in this book. And for 2025, I spent a lot of my time taking ideas that were in my head and putting them into this system and engaging with them and feeling like I was actually starting to make better use of the information that I have available to me for the first time. And it's now 2026 and I'm still doing that religiously. And it's the first time that I've not bounced off something after a couple of months. So that's kind of the origin story of my vault, if you will. It has nothing to do with AI. The next part of this, and sort of as a parallel theme, parallel track was AI itself. So I started looking at AI late in 2024, and I was not impressed. I really didn't get any value out of it. I tried workflows like, write this email for me, and then it was terrible. So then I had to go and rewrite the email. And I did that a few times and then kind of parked it and thought, this isn't useful to me, and got on with my life. But some point in 2025, I started using it again, probably when we rolled it out internally in the company, and we got told, look, you do this, save time, do all these good things with it. And I'll tell you, I started working with AI in a different way before, and I've got a good example of a situation. So I was working on a customer, and there was this really contentious situation, and I needed to send an email to address some points that was this contentious situation. And I opened up the chat window and I said, look, this is the background of this customer. These are the stakeholders. These are the politics. These are the motivations of each of these different people. This is what I want the email to get across. This is the desired outcome that I want to get everybody to at the end. These are the people that are likely to object. These are the people that are on our site. But whatever, I fed it in lots of context. And it wrote me an email. And this email was, bar a few tweaks, perfect. I sent it out. I got a response from the stakeholder, the friendly person at that customer. And it was like, that was just exactly right. That was brilliant. Thank you. And I got several other people within Citrix saying the same things. Like, oh, that's just what was needed. And it really was the perfect email. But it's not the vision I was sold on AI. I put maybe over 1,000 words of context into that to get maybe 200-300 words out. So that's not compression. But what that is expansion. It's taking information that I already have in my head, putting it out there and using AI as a way to explore it, challenge me on some of it. Are you sure that this is true? Do you really think that person that's their motivation? Wouldn't it make more sense if whatever those things were? And we went back and forth, and I looked through the chat history. It was a discussion back and forth. I say something, it challenges, it does that, and it was really valuable. And since realizing that's what I was doing, I've not looked back. Every day I use AI in this way. When I have a thought, when I have something that I need to think about, I no longer write it down on a piece of paper and engage with it. I'm talking to an AI about how I can do that. But those two things that I've told you about, my note-taking and my AI thinking, were very much unlinked. They probably the problem that I was trying to solve in the middle of 2025 was, how do I selectively take pieces from my solo thinking in my Zettelkasten and give it to chat windows when I want to start up a new thing. Because every conversation is a blank slate that you're starting with. So I thought the solution was probably something along the lines of, well, if I have lots of notes and I can copy just the notes that are relevant, maybe I can paste them in at the start of a chat. That was where my head was at for most of 2025. And then in November 2025, I think there was a big leap forward in AI models, and Opus 4.5 launched. And all of a sudden, the people who I followed that were talking about Claude Code being quite good were suddenly saying Claude Code wasn't quite good. Claude Code was amazing. And I'm not just using it for my coding, I'm using it for all kinds of other things as well. And that's when the penny dropped to me that actually, if I take this repository of information I already have, which in hindsight was pretty cool because, back when I was thinking about how I can develop this note-taking system, I wasn't asking myself what format would be perfect to be ingested by AI. Markdown, great, let's use that. I just fell onto that. So imagine my surprise when I take this ready formatted set of context and pointed my AI Claude session at it. And suddenly it's like, wow, this is next level. I'm able to not start again from scratch every single time I go and start a conversation. It has all the context available from anything we've ever had before.
I really like the way you kind of stumbled upon the fact that you were utilizing Markdown, and it was actually the perfect solution for utilizing with Claude. It was like, that's a really cool coincidence that it just happened. That was the way you put it together, but yet it made so, it makes such a difference if you're using Markdown files in Claude. And I found, I didn't know this, and I shared it on LinkedIn, but basically within Notepad, you can create Markdown files as well. I wasn't aware of that. I thought you could create text files, but then I saw there is an option and you can go save as Markdown. And then I can now take those Markdown files. Now, the one thing I haven't figured out is if you're utilizing Markdown files, and I queried an AI and it was kind of a bit ambiguous about whether you're reducing your token count when you use Markdown over normal files. And the answer seems to be not really.
No, not necessarily. I think that what's interesting actually is that's kind of the first problem that I realized. I went from having one problem to solve, which was that, I start with no context every time I go to a chat window. How do I make this better? To suddenly having all the context of hundreds of notes over the last year of working that way available. And I was being quite clever, I thought, in Obsidian. I'm using all the YAML metadata to categorize my different notes in different ways, so I can differentiate between what is an idea and what is a finished article or whatever that might be. And if I go to my chatbot of choice and say, "Hey, find me all the ideas in my vault," it has to open up every single Markdown file, ingest it at a cost of tokens to look for just the header information in that metadata. So I suddenly realized that it's like the visualization that just came to my head at the time was like, you see these videos and photos of snakes that have swallowed like something that's like family pet size, like a goat or a sheep or whatever, and they're just like that.
Yeah,
it's like that. This is too much context. And it's like, I have the exact opposite problem now. I just this isn't all relevant. And it's expensive to do. And while some AI agents now have huge context windows, like 1 million tokens worth of context, if you read the small print, that's not necessarily true. It's like, just because it can absorb 1 million tokens worth of context doesn't mean that you have 1 million tokens worth of perfect recall, instant retrieval. Stuff starts to break down once you get past a certain scale. So it's in our interest from a cost perspective and from a relevance perspective to make those queries as targeted as possible.
Yeah.
And that's where I, for the first time in 20 years, started developing again. I've not written any code in a long, long time. I've still not written any code. Actually, I think I've become a product manager for the first time in 20 years, because I just said, hey, all my files have metadata. I don't want you to ingest all those files at a huge cost. Help me write a script, help me write a service that will go through all my metadata, create a metadata index. And then when I say open up all the notes, the AI agent can go and talk to that metadata index and say, these are the notes. And then I built additional tools that looked at metadata, ones that just looked by plain old file name, ones that I mentioned that the idea of Zettelkasten is that all the notes are linked together using wiki links. I wrote tools that could traverse those links. So suddenly, rather than just say, here's my vault, find the needle in a haystack, I could say, I'm working on this idea. Here's the starting note. Start there and traverse all the links of the chain of thought and load that into the context. And let's have a conversation about this topic. And suddenly it was doing that, and the token count wasn't quite as scary. Not as scary, but still much bigger. So I don't have exact figures, but I've heard bandied about like 10 times token usage. And I think that's probably about right. I certainly blew past the pro level of Claude, $20, £20 a month. That's a distant memory now. I'm paying a lot more than that for my...
You're on the Max account, are you?
Yeah. And funnily enough, that's the name of my agent now. It's like, I'm paying for you, so I'm going to... you're not Claude anymore, you're now Max. Which is more expensive. But at the same time, I'm getting such good value, I think, out of working in this way, and I'm not going back to what I was even a year ago. That's a fee I'm willing to pay.
I just want to go back to something because I wanted to see what your view is, because I think we may have differing views on it. Is you said you generated an email from AI. That's where I kind of pause and feel that AI should be a human to human response, but I get what you're saying, that potentially you can augment it with AI. So it comes back to your whole chain of cognition starting point. But I definitely try and, write most of my own emails, because, most of them are just yes or, something really short. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't want it to replace me when it comes to email, but I can see in certain contexts, it can be good, as you said, to be utilized as a thinking partner, where, as you said, you've got multiple stakeholders, there's different consequences if you piss someone off and all that, and you want to work it all out. So I can see it in that, but I'm just thinking in my own kind of viewpoint in a general way that AI email, I like to answer myself, because I was talking to someone and they were basically saying, well, basically it was like someone was writing an AI assisted email and responding with an AI, and it just becomes a bit pointless. But no, there is a thing, like, you can write like you can get AI to generate a 20 or 40 page document, and then someone uses AI to summarize your AI generated document. So it's just, but it does come back again, I think, to the whole chain of cognition that, it did start with a human thought, and then it's the evolution of that.
Absolutely. We're going to violently agree on this, I think, actually. That's probably one of the only examples of a time where I've written an email with AI. I dislike AI as a compression tool. Particularly in human-to-human interaction. It's just like you say, if my AI is going to write something verbose and flowery and your AI is going to distill it back into the bullet points, why don't I just open up Teams and send you those bullet points instead? But it's the ideas that matter. So no, I totally agree in that regard, and it's not something I do very frequently. But I would also argue, I think, as you alluded to, that wasn't so much of an email as it was a performance, a tap dance of that it needed to be. It needed to walk a tightrope very finely, and it needed to be. And for that, actually, I could have written those words, and I definitely authored all the ideas that went into it. But in the end, I just needed some some guardrails to help keep me on that tightrope.
And I get in the context you've used it in. I think it makes sense, because otherwise, probably what you would have done is sent it to a colleague or someone and asked, "Can you review this? What do you think of this?" And you've done the exact same thing, utilizing AI, and probably done it quicker because you're not waiting for someone to respond. It's instantaneously you get that response, and then you were able to, you got the feedback you needed. So yeah, no, I think in that context it's good. But yeah, I'm just, human to human interaction needs to stay human to human interaction.
Agreed.
Because if I have to read one more AI generated comment on LinkedIn, I'm going to scream, because if you're listening and use AI generated comments, just stop doing it. No, it's not. No one needs it.
And everybody knows you're doing it.
Exactly, because it's using really verbose language, and it's just like, your insights were really insightful, something along those. It's just like, no, please, just give me a human comment, like, it was crap or something.
I liked it.
I liked it, or you're full of shit, whatever. Like, just can we talk?
Not this, it's that. It's like, oh no, don't need that anymore.
So when we come to this whole kind of concept, and we've talked about in the concept of knowledge work, where do you see that in kind of like from an EUC perspective? Like, where, like, I know you and Brian have, Dave and Brian Madden, who's been, I think, are the on the podcast the most
top podcast hosts.
Have been talking, because they both work at Citrix, and they're both into this whole second brain thing. And you have connected your brains together. Is that correct? Or
there's a couple of things to unpack there. I'll start with the second point here, which is, and this is something that's been swimming around in my mind for a while, actually, which is that, is there a way that shared vaults can exist? So is that the model? Should we be all like putting our cognition into like big pools where they messily interact with each other? And I've realized the answer to that is absolutely not, because one of the reasons why it works as a cognitive enhancer for me is that I trust the contents. I know it's my thinking.
Brain.
It's my brain.
Yeah,
it's my ideas.
Thoughts.
It's my thinking. And the way I have my system set up is very much firewalled. So I can realize what is mine and what has come in externally, what words I've written, what words have been written, maybe paraphrased even by an AI. So I put a lot of value in the sanctity of my vault.
Yeah.
So if I was to mix Brian's stuff in with mine, I'd suddenly start sounding like Brian, and that might be very good for my career, because Brian's a very insightful guy. But it's not me. It's no longer. I'm not adding any value. So what we've come up with is, we have both created public versions of our vault. So it's not everything, but it's
okay. So it's a limited subset of what you've given. I know Brian has put it up on a website, and you've done the same, and you've the ability to query it if you're not using Claude Enterprise and it's locked down by your IT department. And you can't connect MCP servers, which is what I'm currently facing. So I may have to purchase a different Claude subscription, but the thoughts of a Mac subscription scares me.
Yeah. Does not fit well with the budget. No.
Yeah.
No. So it's the same concept, but in an enterprise, it wouldn't necessarily be a publicly available sanitized version. It would be something a little bit more complete, but it's partitioned off. It's an MCP connection to Brian. So if I want to run something by Brian, I have two options. I can bug him on Teams, and he will tell you. I frequently do. Or I can say, hey, what does Brian think about this? And I can talk to his MCP connector, and I can get probably a very insightful answer in return. So that's how we've found the best way to do it. Distinct second brains, they don't interact with each other, but they're capable of talking to each other. And I think that coming back to the first part of your question, I think that in EUC and enterprise, I think context and the vaults that the context live in will be the new user profile. I think that it is the most important thing. But that context can be probably layered into multiple different things. And that can be organized, I think, by different layers and different authors as well. Like, for example, like we're probably at the top of the chain, or maybe the bottom, whichever way you want to look at it. We probably have the company context. It's like, this is what it means to work at Citrix. These are our values. These are our processes. These are our systems. And I think probably that bottom cognition layer is authored by them and appears seamlessly on my vault. Above that, we probably have some other Citrix authored content, which is what it means to be an account technology strategist. This is what your goals are. This is what our processes are. These are the tools that you have access to. And that probably goes in as a layer above that. And then on top of that is me and what makes me unique. And I think that's the bit that we should be able to share. But I also think that's the bit that, because we can then have an AI query all the way down through the stack and get the, what does the ATS think about this? What does the futurist and vice president think about this? And get very different viewpoints on the same thing, but with the same foundation of we both work at Citrix. So I think that's it, really. It's that I think that this needs to happen within the walls of the enterprise for that to work. And that is probably the biggest challenge right now, which is that
that's the way of getting everything from your head into a system that everyone can use.
I want to play devil's advocate here, though, because I've been thinking about this ownership. And if you're doing this kind of thing and utilizing AI, and what's to stop, if it's like a corporate account you're doing this with, what's to stop then the company you're working from basically having that and going, well, we have how he thinks and what he does, and we can just replace him with an AI.
Yeah.
It's also something that's occurred to me, and it keeps me up at night in that could be the direction. It's like, hang on a minute, I can get 80% of the value of Dave at 0% of the salaries. I have like 25 plus years of industry experience, and they can buy that real cheap by having me for a period of time. I don't have a good answer. I have gone down a rabbit hole of thinking, well, maybe what's needed is that for that top layer of context that's me, and actually is not company sensitive information. It's just it's my thoughts, my cognition. Maybe there's some sort of encryption key needed for that only I have access to, that actually we can interact with it whenever I'm in the loop, but you take me out of the loop and then it ceases to function. But I think that market forces would drive the need for that. If that was suddenly available and one employer was offering it and one wasn't, maybe that would maybe that's something that would have to. But that's one way I could think of solving the problem. But certainly nobody doing it today.
That makes sense, as you said. Like, yeah, exactly. If you've got like an encryption key that you can, remove if you don't want that part of that data or that kind of thing. Yeah, no, it's just something that's been, I've been talking to Brian and talking to yourself and reading more about this, and I'm thinking it sounds great, but at the same time I can see that there's a negative side to this as well. So I just wanted to go into it in a little bit but yeah, I think it's almost like that kind of separation of church and state type thing. So
yeah. And I think there's a danger as well in that if enterprises go, no, we don't want people working this way. I'm going to play devil's advocate here now. I don't connect my I mean, I do actually now. I'll tell you about what we're doing something internally at Citrix. But when I skunk working this, I don't connect my second brain to any Citrix systems. There's no customer information in there. There's no company sensitive information at all. Everything that is in that second brain vault is my thoughts.
Yeah.
But those little shards of insight and information forged to be something really quite valuable and really quite company sensitive. Like, for example, I could go to my no company information at all, supplied information all second brain and say, what do I think about super secret initiative X that I might be working on? And it would synthesize something that might be scarily close to what happens. And I think that this is probably the next corporate espionage, is looking at CEOs, looking at influential figures, and data mining every single public thing they've ever said, putting it all into a system like this, and then saying, what don't they want me to know that they're doing? What if we add all the breadcrumbs together over years?
Oh crap. Yeah, that's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, no, I get where you're going with this. Wow. Yeah. No, yeah, because our personalities have traits within them that link to. Oh wow!
Yeah, that are available online, and in everything we write, you can see parts of your character.
Everything we share on social media, etc.
Yeah. And do you know what? I wandered off from my own point here, which wasn't actually that sort of scary dystopian future. It was actually that right now my second brain has no links to company information. It's just all my thoughts. So if my company said, you must not do this, how would they ever know? I'm not copying. This isn't like DLP issue in the way that it's historically been. It's not. I'm not copying no company data. I'm not taking any files. Nothing. No clipboard. Nothing. It's just me and the observations I'm making as a person in the room, and I'm putting my thoughts down. So they couldn't control that. So the way that they have to mitigate this risk, because people who worked this way will not want to go back. They have to make provisions for them to be able to do this within the walled garden of the enterprise, because people will. And I think a very small percentage of knowledge workers are doing this today. I think it's orders of magnitude more than it was a month ago. And I think by the end of this year, it's going to be a significant factor, because everybody's talking about this. People are starting to cotton on that this is a really valuable way of working. And once the floodgates open, it's going to be like the shadow AI revolution, shadow IT revolution, but with AI, but it's going to be off the charts. I think that you either offer this within the company walled garden so we can do this as good corporate citizens, or people are going to do it anyway, and you'll have no way of knowing that they're doing this because they're not interacting with the corporate systems.
Yeah, you just get your own AI subscription and file share on a non-company device and do what you want. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
and then the next stage of this for myself is taking these insights to my employer and saying, let me do this within the walled garden, so I can suddenly give it even more context, stuff that is company sensitive, stuff that is from our systems. Let me do that. That's the next progression of this.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No.
Yeah, and the question that I have, because you're very positive about everything that's happening, but does it still get it wrong? So, a lot of times it works for you, but
yes.
Does it gets it wrong?
Yes, completely. And that's coming back to the start of this with chain of cognition, is that I'm not blindly accepting what the information that comes out of it. I'd say, a significant percentage of the time, the initial things that I get back are absolute nonsense. I'm like, where did you even begin to draw these conclusions from? And sometimes I'll ask that, and sometimes it will say, do you know what? 3 months ago, you talked about this, and I'll go, actually, do you know what? That's a really insightful thing. And then suddenly my whole thinking has expanded. Yeah. And the reason it can do that as well is because I built semantic search into my vault. But oftentimes it's just, no, this is just absolute nonsense, and I have to go and educate it, educate my agent, say, no, this is not what we think, and this is why this is what we think. And often, to me, that is a valuable exercise, because it allows me to strengthen my point, maybe change my opinion sometimes, but quite often the information I'm given at first is completely wrong and it can't be trusted. But that's my job as the human in the loop to figure out when that is the case.
Yeah. I think you've highlighted perfectly the whole concept of human in the loop. We can't be 100% trustful of these systems at the moment. I did some research on you, and I used AI. They went and found someone completely different, despite because I couldn't read your website, so it just went off, and I was like, that is not the Dave I'm talking to. So, and then I just copied and pasted the text from your website, and it gave me way more insight and context. So yeah, we you have to very much at this stage where it's very much a human in the loop. So just kind of to finish up, Dave, for kind of other knowledge workers out there, what's the kind of, where do they start?
Yeah, I think that everybody has an opinion on this online. You can say, do this, download these 10 tools, follow these processes, follow this. No, I don't believe in that at all. And coming back to my origin story, it's like the reason why all these note systems didn't work for me is that they weren't how my brain works naturally. Everybody is different. And I think that the way that their AI tools will work for them will be different for each person because it's shaped around you and how you think and how you work. So my advice is simply this: start with a blank slate. Get a folder where you can save files. If you have files that you want to put in there as sort of seeding of content, great, put that into there. But if not, that's fine too. Start with a blank slate. Point an AI chatbot at it, and then set the ground rules. Say, this is our shared space. I can write to it. You should feel free to write to it as well. Every time you learn something, save it to an area in the vault that you can read so you understand who I am. When we come across a roadblock, document that. And then this is, I suppose, like the skill, what you would call a skill in the vault. You can say, save it here. Do all these things. And then say, interview me, ask about who I am, ask about what I do, ask about how I want to work with you, and we'll come up with a working set. So that's probably like an hour's worth of just going back and forth. But it's not prescriptive. You can use whatever storage system you want. You can use whatever AI tool that you want that can connect with it through MCP maybe. And just do that. And the next important thing is to do something real with it. So coming back to the idea of a Zettelkasten, the value of it isn't the information it contains. It's the fact that it is a thinking system as well as a note system. So it's really important that you bring real problems that you want to solve into the system and work in the system. It's not just something that you chat to and then go back and, if you're developing something, develop it within that system and it will compound over time. The more information you put in, and the better it will be. But also, the more you work with it, the more you'll figure out where the deficiencies are. I need a search. Where the gaps are, and you can work to close those. But your system will look completely different to mine once you do that. So start with a blank slate, put your own information in it. If, however, you want to start, not necessarily as a prescription of where to start, but if you want a go at interacting with something that's already established, on my website, davebreer.ai, I have uploaded a public version of my vault. You can interact with it in a couple of ways. You can add it as an MCP connector and just ask it questions about what I think about things. Or it's on GitHub, that vault. You can fork it, you can download it, you can point your own AI agent at those notes, and the specific notes in there that I've left unfinished, arguments that I've not yet made, go in there, pick one up, and the way that I've told you about working, open up the notes, add to them, link to them, add information, disagree with them. You can do that as a starting point and see if that's something, see if that gels with you. It won't work for everybody, but if you want to have like a playground before you do your own, that might be a good start.
Does reading the book help with understanding the philosophy behind it? Taking notes fast from that book?
Yes, I would say so. I would advise anybody. I do. I advise everyone and anybody to read this book. How to Take Smart Notes. It's honestly, it's my favorite type of information book, in that the biggest criticism you'll hear of it is it could have been a blog post, this. And it's like, yes, it could have been a blog post. And the system is so simple that it could have been a blog post. But I love the exposition and this is the problem we're trying to solve. And this is some insightful things about how people do. I like all that. So I would genuinely recommend that anybody reads this. It's very weighted towards academic thinking and academic sort of writing. But I would argue that you can elevate any sort of industry thinking by applying the learnings within it.
Excellent.
So we've got homework for our listeners, James.
There we go. Yeah, everyone has
Read
their
a book,
homework.
build a system.
Yeah. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. And this has been really thought-provoking and no, I'm not saying insightful, but definitely thought-provoking. And I definitely need to look at what I'm doing and the way I'm interacting with AI myself and figure out what works for me. As you said, this is a very personal thing. So what works for one person won't work for another person. So yeah. And yeah, this has been a great episode. Thanks everyone for watching, listening. Dave, for being our guest, really appreciate it. Absolutely. We'll see everyone on the next episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks.